Good evening, everyone. My name is Al, and I'm here with my great friend Louis. And tonight we want to do a tribute to Carmine Infantino, and he's probably the most influential person in comics to come out of Brooklyn. And with no further ado, I want to send it over to my friend Louis, and he'll tell you a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so I figured to keep it the theme of Brooklyn and the history of Brooklyn and the great citizens and what they bring to the world as a whole. We would highlight Carmine. We talk about comics, we talk about Batman, and I figured, oh yeah, let me look up who's famous or who's done this or that that's from Brooklyn. And not surprisingly, a lot of comic book creators came out of New York. A lot of the big ones, Stan Lee, Bob Kane, all of them. But, focusing on Brooklyn, Carmine came up. And it's like, oh yeah, I mean, Carmine, talk about a big name. Now, you may not know him, but I can assure you, you know his contributions to the the world of comic books.
So is he Silver and Golden Age, or would you say more Silver Age?
Yeah. Based on his age and when he got started, Carmine would have jumped in during the golden age of comics.
Right, because the Silver Age, correct me if I'm wrong, is 1967 starts, right? Correct, around that time?
1956.
56, oh,
Yeah.
I was off. That's why I have Louis with me.
Well, and if he's not grandiose enough for you yet, Carmine has a direct hand in the interchange from Golden Age to Silver Age, or what's commonly referred to as, the event that caused that change.
Okay, which is, remind me again of that?
The creation of the second Flash, Barry Allen.
That's right, okay.
Yeah. So Carmine's born in Brooklyn, and he went to a couple of schools.
Yeah, he went to PS 75 and also PS 85, which is located, if you're familiar, obviously, in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of was a tough area back in those days. I mean, a lot of areas in Brooklyn were tough areas, and that was one of the tougher areas. I mean, I grew up more in Windsor Terrace area, and we had a very tough area back, toward like the docks, like in, past like Sunset Park and stuff like that. Now most of the areas have become very gentrified. You can't even touch any of the property there. Like Captain America said, even I can't afford to live in Brooklyn anymore. I guess that's what I'm doing in Florida right now.
Right, yeah. Well, everybody from New York's coming down. It seems
Right,
like, right?
right.
But yeah, when Carmine gets started, he, in a way, not lucks out, but while a lot of the older guys that were already working in the comic book industry
Right.
were called off to war, Carmine stayed behind because he was too young to enlist.
That's right. I remember reading that. Yeah.
So he stays around, and he contributes to that era of comics, the golden age of comics, based on his age. Specifically his age.
I think they were saying that he was going around looking for work, trying to work in one of these warehouses where they were making the comics.
Right.
And he came across, didn't have success, and he came across this one guy who was supposed to really be a tough guy, and he ended up hiring him for like $1 a day.
Yeah,
and that kind of changed his life.
Well, in those days, you really had to kind of almost luck in to find. I mean, you still have to luck into work into comics,
Yeah.
oftentimes. But in those days, if you had a good work ethic, if you were a quick worker, because a lot of these books had much faster turnaround times than they do now, you can make a name for yourself. And yeah, they were taskmasters, but people like Jack Kirby and Carmine, they were good workers, and they proved themselves to be able to produce good work in a decent amount of time. Funny enough, Carmine is best known for his contributions to DC Comics, but his big break was for Timely. Now, you don't know Timely as Timely, you know Timely as Marvel. But Timely was one of the names that Marvel Comics had before it became Marvel Comics. And he, I believe he first started working there for a strip called Jack Frost.
Okay.
Nobody knows it really anymore. I mean, it's not like it's a character that's used now.
Jack Frost, the winter character, that same one?
Within those veins, yeah.
Okay, okay.
But yeah, eventually, through his hard work and jumping to other smaller publishers outside of, the big two, the DC and the Marvels that you would know, Carmine eventually ends up working for DC, and he has a hand in a lot of really big events, big moments in comic book history, specifically for DC, creating some of the most memorable characters. Again, he is the father, in a way, of the Silver Age.
Right, because he was coming into his own then. Because if he was too young to be in World War II, he's got to be in his 30s or 40s by at least 56, you said, is when Silver Age started. So he's got to be in his 30s, let's just figure.
Yeah,
he's in his prime. I guess that's my point. He's in his prime.
Versus, most of the other guys are not aging out, but they're fairly older already at that point. He was so influential that they put him as an art director of sorts for DC, for the covers of the books, the design of things, kind of a company-wide look of what they wanted the books to look like.
Right.
And like I said, most of his contribution was for DC. He did jump ship, goes to Marvel and works there for a little bit on Spider-Woman, and I forget what other books he actually ended up working. But most of the body of work that you would recognize from Carmine is for DC. And I figured we would highlight...
It'd be fantastic. I think, and again, both of us, our favorite character, is Batman, and like a lot of you guys out there. And he was, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was responsible almost for the resurgence of Batman, right, in the 60s.
Right, yeah, he had a hand in that. At one point, Batman becomes not hokey, but kind of almost silly.
Yeah.
And the return back to those pulp hero roots of Batman, grim or gritty kind of turn.
Right.
He had a hand in that. Yeah.
I know we're digressing a little bit. Did he like the campy version of Batman, the TV series? Was that something he was? Because I wouldn't think he'd probably like that too much.
I couldn't answer that directly. I don't know exactly where he stood.
Right.
But one of his greatest contributions came about from the 60s Batman show.
Really? This I can't wait to hear.
Yeah. All right, so if I mention Batgirl, you kind of have an idea of Batgirl, right?
Yeah, Yvonne Craig, I think of.
Yeah, Yvonne Craig, from the 60s TV show.
Yeah.
By the time season 3 of Batman, the TV series, comes around, the creators were losing a bit of viewership, and they figured, we want a female audience. We want to try to pull in a bigger female audience. Because I guess Adam West just wasn't doing it for the ladies. But they asked DC to bring in a Batgirl or a female Bat character. Now, there was Batwoman in the old comics, and there was a Batgirl as well. But the Batgirl that we all know and love, Barbara Gordon, that's a picture of her there. She was created in comic books first, but specifically for the TV show.
Right.
And Carmine had a hand in her creation. He created the design of the character and what she ended up looking like.
Oh, nice.
So she's still around. You still see Barbara in different forms, but she was a major contribution that he had.
That's a pretty good contribution because that was a key element.
Yeah, and she was a very
She was.
I didn't grow up watching the show. I did grow up watching the show, but not as it came out.
Right. Neither did I. I'm 55, and Louis is younger than I am, but I watched it in syndication. So I'm trying to think of when I first saw Batman. Someone out there might know, but I watched it on Channel 11 in New York, and I'm going to say obviously the 70s, but I don't know if it was. I know Star Trek was around 74. So it was probably around that time or a little bit before. I had probably seen the movie first. The movie that they had made about the Batman TV. It was a 2-hour movie.
Oh, yeah,
that they had done.
The full
length one.
Yeah.
But so I'm guessing it was at that point. But I could definitely tell you I know my mom enjoyed watching the episodes with Batgirl. It just kind of brought a new spin to it. And Batgirl was cool. She rode the motorcycle. She had even though Batman had the motorcycle, it was the dual motorcycle, and she rode the motorcycle by herself. so it was a little more like badass, I guess you could say, or something.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
It was a good contribution. Here's one that goes back to the golden age of comics. You know, Carmine actually created a character back in those days before the Silver Age term, and Black Canary, you know, who you may recognize
oh yeah, we
from
recognize her.
showing up on Arrow now. You may have seen her, or a version of her shows up in Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey movie. But yeah, there's a picture of the Black Canary. If you can see it.
What
Yeah.
are her powers again, Black Canary? I don't
Well,
recall.
Dinah, well, there's two versions. There's the mother who operated in the 40s, and then Dinah who takes over the role.
Okay.
But originally, Black Canary didn't have powers.
Ah,
Later, when her daughter is introduced, they introduced the sonic scream. So she would scream and produce like this blast of energy.
yeah.
But yeah, Black Canary, I mean, she's been featured in all the not all the cartoons, but in the Justice League cartoons.
Right.
She's been in movies. She's still around now.
Definitely a strong female character.
Hmm. And a very neat design. You know, it's iconic. The fishnets, the black leather jacket.
Yeah.
You know, it's a look that's endured since,
Exactly.
you know, the 40s.
Oh yeah.
And you know, the biggest contribution he made to comics, the change, remember I told you, from the golden age to the silver age.
Right.
It's always considered when the Flash, Barry Allen shows up,
Right.
which Carmine designed and introduced the whole idea of the whole red suit with the yellow lightning symbol.
Talk about iconic symbology,
Yeah,
right?
and a design that hasn't changed in, you know, 50 plus years.
I mean, you see that on cars. You drive on the highway, and how many guys have that on their car?
Mm-hmm.
That same design and logo.
Well, this is a Flash number 117. This is actually art from Carmine Infantino right here, and in this issue he introduces one of my favorite Flash villain, which is Captain Boomerang. But yeah, that's
Is that the same one from the
Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad?
Yeah, but more importantly, Flash here in the front cover there. He's actually.
What year is that from now?
This is 1960.
Just show them the back, Louis. I think the back is very interesting.
Oh yeah, the ads on here.
Just a little digression. The ads. I mean, I am not into comics as much as Louis is, but I could tell you, being younger, that was one of the cooler things. In the you read the comic and it was fantastic, and there was always these different products on the back that you wanted to get, and for some crazy reason, they were always like, coming from Brooklyn. It was never like in Brooklyn. You had to ride away to like Battle Creek, Michigan, or somewhere like that, and you get this, different kind of product or thing, and you'd wait in the mail for it, and it was just, that was part of the allure of it, I think, for me anyway, as the comics. And
well, yeah, I can imagine what was the excitement of, I ordered X-ray glasses and telling your buddies about it, and then the excitement of like getting it in the mail, and then figuring out that it's just glasses that say X-ray on it.
Exactly, but we weren't typically disappointed because I don't know. I guess we didn't really. It was just getting mail in those days was just interesting, unlike email today or something. But it just was a really cool thing. And just as another sidebar thing, Louis is really into the collecting side of it. So if anyone has any questions on collecting, and you notice that what he just showed you there, it's actually rated. And Louis has,
graded.
Is that the correct word? Rated? What's the
graded? Yeah, this
yeah,
is just,
it's graded.
Yeah.
And so if you want to sell it, I mean, you really can't sell a comic book unless you send it away to a place. There's one in Tampa, you were saying, right?
Sarasota, actually.
Sarasota, actually.
The CGC, which is the comic grading company, they're based out of Sarasota, and you could sell a comic book like this. You could sell, and you could get money for. It's a decent chunk of money, but when you grade them, a professional looks them over, figures out what kind of condition it's in, the condition of the pages, whether it's been altered or not, and just because, Captain Boomerang is one of my absolute favorite characters, that's why I ended up buying this one in the case and everything.
I mean, it's nice because it's like a third party. Like if you're selling a house, it's someone else coming in, and it takes away the argument part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think most people tend to agree roughly on a grade of a comic, but there's sometimes where there's one issue in it or what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, if you have any questions, you could send them in. leave a comment on it. I try to answer all the comments back on it, and of course, it's something I'll shoot to Lewis and I'll send it back over to you. But yeah,
Well, I'm not an expert. I know a little bit, but yeah. But yeah, that those were some of the biggest contributions that Carmine offered the world, really, because we've inherited all these characters,
right?
And not just Barry Allen either, the Flash, but he also created Wally West. Wally was my Flash when I was growing up.
Really?
Wally was the Flash after Barry.
That's right. Yeah.
And that was who I knew was the Flash. I didn't know it was Barry until later.
Right. I mean, I think that happens even like, say, for me growing up. I mean, people think of Sean Connery as James Bond, but like I grew up essentially in the 70s, and so for me, I knew Sean Connery, but for me it was always Roger Moore, who did a little bit more of a campy version of James Bond, but he was the one I knew. He was the one that at the end of the movie, you always saw James Bond will return in Moonraker or whatever. I think that was a part of his thing. Yeah. And it's really interesting. So what happened to Carmine? I mean, so he does all this for DC. So how long was he active? Did he live like a long life, or was he?
I believe he died in 2013.
Okay,
Don't quote me on that.
I think you're right. I think I read that he was 85. I think when he passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like most of these guys, when they're so entrenched in the company, when they've contributed so much to the company, they become practically ambassadors or honorary members of the company just for years to come because of all they've done. Stan was that way. Stan hadn't written or created no, that's not entirely true. He did create some comic characters in his later years, in his very late years, but not for Marvel. And he was more important as an ambassador to the company. Same thing with Carmine. He was just a legend. He was a great representative of a very specific but fairly wide-ranging era of comics.
Right, and from what I read, he stayed living in the area for his whole life. Because he went to school in Brooklyn, as we mentioned before, and I'm pretty sure he died in Manhattan. So I think he never, and New York was always known as like the publishing capital. So, but I just think obviously Carmine, he grew up there, he was probably comfortable, a lot of relatives around there, and it's a great place obviously to live, but he actually did live out his life in that area, stay true to his roots. Yeah. Which I think is really cool.
A lot of the older creators, they just, New York was the place to be before the offices were moved. And a lot of that has had to do with the Hollywood side of things.
Right. As movies started to take hold and stuff.
Yeah, Marvel's had a huge stamp on, the box office. So they've had a lot of their operations moved out to the West Coast. And somewhat with DC as well, because Warner Brothers, and then AT&T owns them for now. The rumor is they're going to sell them soon. But they tended to stay home in those days. Home being New York.
Right. I guess so many of the characters are based around there, right? So especially on the DC side of things.
Carrie almost became a comic book contributor. She interviewed for Marvel, didn't you? You went to Marvel's offices one time?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. She's there, trust me.
Hi.
Carrie's my wife. Yeah, she's doing the filming here. Supervising the filming, I guess you could say.
But also, just as a quick highlight of Carmine's work, he was instrumental in working out the deal for the first crossover between Marvel Comics and DC Comics. It's a huge book. It's not like a regular comic book size, although they've changed over the years. But this was an oversized book where Superman meets Spider-Man, and they fight and they team up. Now Spider-Man doesn't really stand much of a chance against Superman.
Right.
Just because Superman's just so strong. But Carmine was influential in getting that.
So maybe that's an homage that they do at the end of. I don't remember which Marvel movie it was where they have the race.
That
was more the Flash.
Yeah.
That was the Flash. Okay, scratch that. Well, Peter Parker's from Queens, right? So
true enough. Yeah.
And Superman's Metropolis, which is supposed to be New York City, they did the filming at the Daily Planet, which was the Daily News building.
Right.
which again goes back to what Lewis is saying, why a lot of these guys stayed home. And Batman was supposed to be, well, there's a little controversy as to where that's supposed to be, but it's pretty much considered to be New Jersey
Gotham,
somewhere.
yeah,
Gotham.
At least I consider Gotham, yeah. If we were talking real world terms, yeah, somewhere in Jersey.
Some people have said Weehawken, which is basically very mountainous. Kind of like has those cave type of things, right? And even where Nightwing sets up out of Bloodhaven.
Yeah.
Bloodhaven's supposed to be right next to where that is supposed to be. But just little random facts for you guys.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
It is a bat chat, right? I guess we would
Absolutely.
consider this a bat chat.
We consider this a bat chat. That's what we call these things, the bat chats. And if you guys have any questions, please shoot them out, and we'll try to answer them, or think something that we might have missed, or if you guys have an idea for a bat chat, we try to get together at least once a month or so and do these kinds of things. I mean, we run a foundation, and we don't actually donate musical instruments to kids who can't afford them. In fact, we're doing a lot of work with a place in Manhattan right now who works with Juilliard, and it's called Operation Music Project, and they actually work with my wife's laughing at me here. They work with Juilliard, and she'll just stay behind the camera. It's a lot harder on this end of it. So that's what we do. Lewis is one of our directors for the foundation, and we really try to do a lot of good work. We're sponsoring 3 kids right now, and we do all the stuff. We donate musical instruments, and it's in memory of my son Matt, who we lost at 27 a couple of years ago here in Florida. Matt was a musician, and his nickname was Waffles, and he had that nickname since he was in high school. So Celebration High School, and hence the name, the Waffles Foundation. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, just let us know.
Or if you have a favorite Brooklynite for us to highlight,
Yeah.
just to keep with the Brooklyn
Just to keep with the Brooklyn theme.
Yeah.
Right. There's got to be somebody we missed.
Oh yeah, no. There's other creators. We just picked Carmine because he was just such an obvious choice to
Yeah,
pick.
I mean, there's so many random people. Like when you research something, now he's not related to comics, but I just was watching a movie called Diggstown, which was made in 1992, and I realized that Louis Gossett Jr. was actually came from Sheepshead Bay, and I'd never known that. So it's just some of these random facts come across. Has nothing to do with comics, but just in the same vein,
I love movies. Everybody loves movies.
Yeah. There's probably someone out there who we might be thinking of. Yeah. So So great stuff. I want to thank Lewis again for doing me this favor, coming onto my channel, because he's such an expert in this field. And I mean, I love movies, and I love Batman as my favorite character, and I love the Marvel side of things as well. But I really love getting together with Lewis because he just gives such a depth to the talk, and he's an expert on it. So again, any questions, just throw them this way, and I'll make sure Lewis, I'll call him up or text him, and I'll get you an answer, I promise.
Okay.
All right. So thank you again for joining us. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I'd really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next video, on the next Bat Chat. So my name is Al. And
I'm Lewis, and we'll see you same bat time.
Same Bat Channel. Take care now, folks. Bye-bye now. Thank you.